Oh, wow, wow. Hey, Alex.
Hey, Drew.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm not arguing with you, Alex.
You're not?
Who said that, Alex? I didn't say that, Alex. Well, if I said that, I would be wrong, Alex. Guess what?
What?
It's time for an all-new Cinema Bias. And we're doing tonight a really special movie. It's one of my favorite of the John Patrick Shanley films. We are doing Joe Versus the Volcano. But first, some credits. I had the world's quickest costume change when I realized just how inappropriate that shirt was. Like everything was showing.
It was?
Anyway.
I didn't know it was inappropriate.
It was like weirdly cut and like my bra was showing out on the side. It was just not great. Anyway, welcome to the internet, guys. This is Cinema Bias, a show that Alex and I do weekly, talking about mostly the last period of time we've been talking about John Patrick Shanley. He's a writer. He's a director. Last week we did Doubt, which is a play that he wrote and put on Broadway and then also adapted for the big screen with Meryl Streep and Philip Seymour Hoffman. So, like, what else could we follow that with other than his 1990? Yeah, it's exactly 1990 comedy adventure, romantic comedy adventure. Like this, I don't know what genre this movie falls in. And it's Joe Versus the Volcano. So we started with, let's remember this. We started with Wild Mountain Time, a movie that I was talking about this on Mara's stream the other day, Alex. I was with Paul Oyama and a bunch of people, and Paul Oyama, I said we're doing John Patrick Shanley, and he goes, "Oh, have you guys seen Wild Mountain Time yet?" And I went, "Yeah, we started with Wild Mountain Time. This whole experiment of like going through this man's oeuvre has started because of Wild Mountain Time, and for that we have you to thank, Alex." But before we get any further in it, why don't you tell them a little bit about what this show is? What is Cinema Bias?
Guys, oh my gosh, did you not know what Cinema Bias is? Let me do.
How dare you?
Do you a salad and remind you. Cinema Bias is a show where Drew and I go over movies that really challenge us and really kind of challenge us to watch something outside of our comfort zone. So because when we grow up being movie lovers, whether consciously or not consciously, we end up creating these heavy or not so heavy movie biases, whether it be for or against certain genres, directors, actors, whatever it may be. And it's fun to sometimes find those connections we sometimes don't realize are there, and notice those little patterns and break down those biases to find new films that we end up loving or hating. Who knows?
Couldn't have said it better myself, Alex, and that's why I had you say it. Guys, I do want to say we do have Streamlabs open tonight. You can see the little bar behind me. I figured out how to put it behind my head. Streamlabs.com/VideoDrew if you want to send in some questions, some comments, some thoughts about what a brain cloud is, because we're going to get started just diving right into this. Alex, what was your bias about this film? Had you ever heard of it? Are you a big fan of action, comedy, romance films? There's not that many films that fall, I think, into this specific genre, but there are a few.
There are a handful. I feel like they're very few and far between compared to much more traditional rom-coms, for sure, or romance dramedies even. But yes, my bias against this movie is one, I didn't even know this movie existed.
Oh, okay. I love it when that's the bias.
I want to say one of the first few Tom Hanks movies that I remember watching growing up was obviously Toy Story, and it was more of about his voice rather than his image.
Wait, that's how you knew Tom Hanks was from Toy Story? Oh man, that dates me.
Because I was like 5 years old when I saw it.
No, that makes total sense. Yeah. It's funny. this era of him really reminds me of the Toy Story him. And I think it's because when he was hired to do Toy Story, this was around that was like, you know, it takes 5 years to make a Pixar film. I think he was hired right off of Philadelphia, which was only like a year after this, right? So
I wouldn't be surprised, to be completely honest. He's definitely has his jump from films, like from the late 80s to early 90s, is a really interesting transition because he's doing these rom-coms, these comedies, these very physical comedies like Big and Turner and Hooch and
The Money Pit, and
suddenly he's doing Forrest Gump and Philadelphia.
Well, he did Philadelphia before Forrest Gump. Philadelphia was like the big one.
It was like right around. It was like early 90s. They're kind of interchangeable for me year wise. I just know they were next to each other. But that transition, and it was definitely kind of an interesting time for him as an actor. He definitely got also right a little bit after he did Green Mile. I can't forget it was his first film with Steven Spielberg was just a year or two later with Saving Private Ryan, which now is one of the most iconic director-actor collaborations of all time, in my own humble opinion. You could make that its own Schmoedown slice. Hanks, Spielberg movies.
Or movies that seem like his, at least that feel like his, because now he makes movies that feel like Steven Spielberg movies that he directs, and like it's all good. I think it's you know, Apollo 13 I think goes on one side of it, and I think Philadelphia was trying to look it up, 93, and so and Forrest Gump was 94. So you're right, they're right next to each other. And then 95 was Toy Story, right? Yeah, 95. So, but when he was hired for
95 was Toy Story. I thought 95, like Toy Story was like 94. 93.
No, it's 95. So, because 95 is Toy Story, but I remember because I just did an article about this, or I did a script about this for Rotten Tomatoes, and the big thing was that he started recording Toy Story while doing Philadelphia, and his big thing was like, I want to do a serious movie, but then, and I think he got nominated or won the Oscar for Philadelphia. Or Denzel did, or just won something. I know Philadelphia was a big deal about a lawyer that was fired from his job during the AIDS crisis because they thought it was catching or they were homophobic, and then it's a whole thing. He hires Denzel as his lawyer. So it's a whole thing. But then, can you imagine doing that? And then in the interim, you're also like recording your lines as Woody. Like that's very funny to me. And that thinking about that makes me giggle.
Yeah, I'm sure when he was filming Philadelphia, he was like, I kind of need something lighter.
Yeah, he's like, I need to go back to my roots.
Something to let me breathe a little bit.
He'd win. I knew.
Of course he won. Yeah, he won the Best Lead Actor back-to-back years. He's to date. He's one of the only actors to do so. There's like less than 5.
So you knew that he was in this movie. Did you have any like knowledge? Do you like Meg Ryan? I mean, I know how you feel about Shanley.
I didn't know this movie existed until you or someone else told me, like literally this year. And I feel, no, scratch that. I think I found out because I was writing trivia questions, and one of the questions was like, how many Meg Ryan, Tom Hanks film collaborations have they had together? And the answer, I believe, is 3.
The answer is 3, but the answer is only 2 Nora Ephron, but 3 total because it's 2. It's Sleepless in Seattle and the other one.
You've Got Mail.
Yeah, You've Got Mail, and then it's this one. But it's like this one is not a Nora Ephron movie. But I got that one wrong once, I think, in practice, maybe with you, because I would assume that this was also an Ephron movie. I also thought this movie, hilariously, for a very long time, was directed by Joe Dante, until I realized the reason I thought that was because his name is Dante, and this movie has the word volcano in it. And in my very Drew-like brain, was like, Dante's Peak, volcano. It's like Inferno. It's like the same year that the 2 volcano movies came out.
I honestly, like, because of the fantasy elements that's kind of added to it, this kind of weird world part of it, to me, it feels almost like it would be an interesting, funny double feature to go along with The Burbs.
Yes, oh my God. Or like a lot of his like work. I mean, like not a lot of his work, but like a lot of the Joe Dante stuff, I feel like could be this movie. Did you see that there was a cameo? There were 2 cameos near the end there that are pretty big names. Abe Vigoda and Nathan Lane.
I had to like double check. I was like, is that Nathan Lane?
Mm-hmm. Nathan Lane plays one of the Jewish Pacific Islanders who are obsessed with orange soda in this movie. This movie is
like, where's the orange soda coming from? What is this?
I think they're being supplied by the dad. He must be bringing it to the island, for the transistors, for the conductors. But I guess we'll just dive into it, Alex. I'm going to have you tell me the plot of this movie, and God help us, we're going to give Alex 1 minute to describe the plot of Joe Versus the Volcano. I'm putting my money on you making it to the second act. I believe in you. I believe we're going to get past just the initial setup. But let's go. You know what? I'm going to put my minute on the clock. Let's go. Wait, William Harrell saying the exact same thing. Okay, so I'm not crazy. Like, this does seem like a Joe Dante movie, kind of. It's not as dark, but like,
yeah, a bunch of people like, really thought that.
Okay, 1 minute on the clock, Alex. You got 1 minute. Excuse me. Let's start now. Let's go.
Okay, Tom Hanks plays Joe Dante. He's living a horrible, miserable life at some kind of weird, kind of potentially dystopian medical products company place. Anyway, he finds out from a medical appointment, he's like, you have a weird black cloud in your brain. And he's like, okay, and you're going to die in like 5 months. And so he's like, okay, I'm going to quit my job. And so a guy comes over to place. Meanwhile, he's like hitting the walls and shit. And he's like, hey, I know you're about to die, so I'm going to give you a bunch of credit cards and you can go balls to the wall crazy. Just go here, here, and here. And so he's like, okay, I'm going to go shopping and do a whole bunch of stuff and ooh, fancy luggage. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go down to LA and oh my gosh, Meg Ryan. Okay, Meg Ryan is right there. Meg Ryan is played by like one chick who used to work with. It's like a secretary or something like that. And he meets the other Meg Ryan number 2 out in LA who ends up being that one rich guy who gave him money. One of his daughters, crazy. And they end up like having this kind of makeout session for a hot second. And then he's like, okay, I'm going to drop you off.
And
never again.
Time. Well, Alex, you got pretty far. I saw what you did there. You started to condense, and that's great. We did miss the major premise, which is the guy gives him a lot of money to basically go balls to the wall for 5 months with the condition that after the 5 months, he throws himself into the mouth of an open volcano because there is an island that has this one mineral that the guy needs to make his conductors. And the mineral can only be found on this island, and the island doesn't want to trade. The people of the island who are, they have a very funny backstory. They're like they're like Jewish immigrants who got lost on the boat ride over to America. So now they're on the Pacific Island. So they're half Pacific Island, half Jewish. So a lot of their songs and dances are actually like their Jewish words and Jewish hymns, which I found very funny and kind of related back to our earlier conversation during Moonstruck about whether John Patrick Shanley was writing this about Jews or Italians. It turns out he just likes the melting pot element. So that's a big thing. The other thing is Meg Ryan plays 3 characters in this movie. She plays the woman in the beginning, she plays the 2 sisters, and she is doing an amazing job. I don't think I've ever liked Meg Ryan as much as I have in this movie. So Joe, he used to be a firefighter. He worked for Dan Hedaya in the most hilarious opening of all time. He works at a medical supply company, like you said, where they apparently make a lot of fake testicles. Yeah, there's some funny ball stuff going on. But also Dan Hedaya, and just like the most brilliant cameo. If you remember him, he's the dad from Clueless. He was Nixon and Dick. He is a very famous character actor. He just spends the entire opening scene just yelling at someone on the phone, going, "I'm not arguing with you. I'm not arguing with you." Well, if I said that, I would be wrong. I didn't say that. No, I didn't say that. He's just having a one-way conversation. It's so funny. And he does this in like 2 or 3 scenes, and then he's just gone. But it's the most perfect cameo I think you can have for him. It's just so good. This movie exemplifies why John Patrick Shanley is a great screenwriter, I think. This is like, out of all his films, out of all of them, this is my favorite in terms of like dialogue and story, I think. Moonstruck is also great. It's this and Moonstruck.
Well, I definitely see why this, and I've kind of mentioned it when watching Moonstruck, where I was like, this feels like a super Drew Grant movie. My husband mentioned that. I watched this and I'm like, this feels like a super duper Drew Grant movie. The comedy, even though it's a very funny movie, it's like in terms of like the jokes, in terms of like the comedic writing and the physical comedy aspect of it is actually not ridiculous. It's kind of subtle, and it's more about the craziness that's going on around them. It also kind of reminds me a little bit of like a much more toned down version of Pee-wee's Playhouse a little bit, because
Is this an
it's
adventure
almost
movie?
like,
You mean Pee-wee's Big Adventure? Or
yeah,
you mean
sorry, yeah, you're right.
okay.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure, where it seems like it's almost like an alternate version of Earth, and where it's just close enough where it was like everything from the architecture, the interior design, the food, everything is just off a
Yeah.
little bit, where you're like, that doesn't feel right.
In the opening, you're definitely like, is this a Terry Gilliam movie? Like, why does this look like a post-apocalyptic world that he's living in? And then you realize it's just sort of like more like a metaphor for like his condition, which is that he was a firefighter and he got very scared putting his life on the line all the time, and he didn't really process it. So then when he stopped being a firefighter and started working this other company, he started becoming a hypochondriac and developed this thing. His doctor says it's called a brain cloud, but his doctor also says that's not what's causing his symptoms. His symptoms aren't real. The brain cloud has no symptoms. It's just going to kill him in 5 months. So he decides he doesn't have anything to do with his life. So when the guy shows up and offers him a bunch of money to throw himself into a volcano, he's like, okay, well, all right. But in that process, he becomes alive. He takes out the girl that he always wanted to at work, and that's played by Meg Ryan. She kind of freaks out when she finds out he's dying and leaves. So then when he leaves for LA, he's greeted at the airport by another Meg Ryan, who refers to herself as a flibberty gibbet, which is one of my favorite moments of, like, I don't know, someone calling themselves a name in history. She's like, I'm a flibberty gibbet.
On her is so funny. It's
and the way she talks like this.
It's kind of, it's like, it's not a Brooklyn accent, but I mean,
it is a Brooklyn accent. It is a Brooklyn accent. It's the same as Audrey 2's in Little Shop of Horror, but Audrey 1, regular Audrey. It's this, I'm sorry, doctor. Yeah, it's a little Harley Quinn-ish. Yeah, it's a Brooklyn, New York accent. And for some reason, when it's done,
from what it's a much more subtle Brooklyn accent compared to like where it's like overly exaggerated, and I kind of expected it to be like really exaggerated considering the aesthetic.
Yeah, she's a little over the top. I mean, she's out of all the three. Right, the first girl, because the second one doesn't say talking to. Sorry, I got confused for a second. Yeah, it is a little over the top, but it's not as over the top as who she plays the second time. The other sister, the one from LA, the first sister we meet, who's the daughter of the person who's made this bargain with him, and she doesn't know. They don't hook up. She doesn't sleep with them. They have this kind of deep talk one night. The one night he's there, and then he goes off and meets the person that's going to take them to sea and take him to the island, and it's just another Meg Ryan. This movie has 3 Meg Ryans, and she plays all these parts really well. And she has different color hair for all of them. And she's really, really, she's really funny. Yeah, she's really beautiful. And she's really, like, I've never thought of Meg Ryan as like the funniest comedic talent in Hollywood. She's okay. I mean, she's like the rom-com person. But this movie, I was like, oh, she's hilarious.
I was like, I honestly, I feel very much the opposite. To me, as far as I'm concerned, I've always known her almost exclusively as a comedic actress.
Yeah, I didn't find her that funny.
A lot of it has been in reference to rom-coms. Yeah. But I mean, but the scenes, like there's so many really great, funny standalone scenes that she makes.
But yeah, well, I guess here's my point. It's like rom-coms are usually not like the woman being funny. Like they're usually the situation being funny. So I've never so I meant is I've seen her mostly in rom-coms, but it's not like she's ever like shown me that she's a great comedic talent herself. Like she's just been like in the situation. But this movie, I was like, oh, she's got some chops. Like she has legs. She's kind of outpacing Tom Hanks, which is hard to do.
Absolutely agree. And Tom Hanks as well. This was also the first movie that I've seen him in where I was like, I get it.
Oh, he can get it. It's like this in The Burbs. He can get it. Yeah, it's weird, Alex. I thought the same thing. I found this movie weirdly erotic. Like I was like, this movie's hot. Like I saw this movie and I got like really like, oh, this is like very. I don't know. It's like my kind of thing. You said it like this seemed like the Drew movie. This is absolutely a Drew movie. I wish I'd seen it earlier in life. I didn't. I saw this movie like earlier this year, and I remember being like, "What the hell?" I keep trying to make Eric watch it because I'm just like, "This is like such a like thrilling kind of film," because it feels like a revelation. It feels like you haven't seen anything like this. It makes you want to go out and have an adventure. And I remember being a kid and watching movies like Willow or Indiana Jones, and then like eliciting the same kind of feeling in me, or that Michael Douglas. Kathleen Turner one where they're like adventurers out in the wilderness. Like it's got that kind of vibe where it just makes you want to go run away and fall in love and like, pull a Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn and Overboard. It's just So good.
It's kind of amazing where, like, because the thing is, when you watch there's been in quite a few movies where the protagonist finds out they're about to die, or they have only so much time left to live kind of situation until something happens, until they have to leave, or so it's like them against the clock. And a lot of times it's just them reacting or being sad about it. And that's totally fine. That's a very different type of movie, obviously. But sometimes it can be very difficult to really translate the ridiculousness and hilarity, but at the same time the complete joy from and freedom from that as well. And I think Tom Hanks is, even though he's he's like, I was like, again, watching this, I was like, you can get it. I've never.
Yeah, it's a weird feeling when you start getting attracted. It's like being attracted to your.
I get it now. But yeah, I just like, and he was charismatic. He was sexy. He was funny, and it just it just felt so light and doable at the same time, which is hard to do.
You know what it is? I think it feels very alive. Like this movie feels like, much like him in this film, like. You watch like the process of someone going from like awake to asleep, or sorry, like asleep to awake. Like you watch a man sort of becoming vibrant and becoming like a going from being like sort of soul sucking and soul dead and feeling like sick all the time. Like when this movie opens, he has maybe the worst haircut I've ever seen in a human being. It's so bad. He looks terrible, and I was like, "Whoa, what movie is this?" And then it went on, and you're like, "Oh man!" Like his hair in this, I got to show you guys. His hair in this is wild. There we go. Just so bad. And this is what the beginning of the film looks like. And it's just so dark and it looks dreary. It does look like a Terry Gilliam film
too. It's almost like cartoony.
It is cartoony.
It's supposed to be. Yeah,
but without knowing what the movie's about, like I walked into this and I was like, is this what Joe Versus the Volcano is about? It's like a really drab workplace film. And then like by the end of it, you're like, oh no, this is like what the Joe Versus Volcano is. It looks like this. And like the color palettes, like we have to talk about Shanley as a director, but like this is the one where I'm like, oh, like he knows what he's doing, because by the end of the movie, which is, by the way, the luggage bit, the runner about the luggage, like the magical journey of the luggage is so good. And the fact that they end up on this, the life for this ends up saving them, and it gets them to the island. And then the island, by the way, ends up exploding because they both jump into the volcano together. The volcano rejects them. They get spat back out like into the sea. The luggage that this guy had sold him on, being like, this luggage is like for a man like wanting to go on an adventure. Like this luggage is like, you know, he basically just sells him on this like idea of the luggage, and it's very sincere. I love the businessman in this. I mean, sorry, the sales guy. I love it, and it's like the adventure they go on. You know when people like really like Loki or like stuff like this that people are really into now, and it's like. That this dynamic sort of transfers over to it. It's an adventure movie about these two people that are getting to know each other. It's sort of like at first they don't like each other, then they do, but it's really just about these crazy set pieces and situations they get into, and the difference between his original life, which was so soul dead and so corporate and so just like he just was waiting to die. Like he just thought something was wrong with him and was just waiting around, being like, I don't feel good. I overstand what that feels like. Like you just walk around all day being like, I don't feel good. And then something just jogs you out of it. And suddenly it's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Turns out, end of the movie, he's like, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't even tell you, but I'm dying. I'm going to only have 5 months to live. So we better make it count. And she goes, wait, why do you think you're dying? He's like, I've got brain fog. And he goes, she's like, what's brain fog? Brain fog. I haven't even heard of that. Like, what is a brain fog? Or brain cloud. Sorry, brain cloud. And he's like, well, it's this thing. And she's like, who's your doctor? Did you get a second opinion? And he goes, my doctor's like so-and-so. And she goes, that's weird. That's my dad's doctor. And like, he doesn't take any other clients. So like, it turns out this was all just a setup. They needed a patsy to basically to offer to jump himself into a volcano. So this doctor set up Tom Hanks. So on behest of this like rich dude. So yeah, it turns out he's not dying. He never was. He was just depressed. And I overstand. So that's basically the plot of the movie. Oh yeah, there's a shipwreck in the middle of it. The woman from So I Married an Axe Murderer in the beginning of Pulp Fiction, she's like on the boat. Carol Kane has like a second
Honey Bunny
cameo as a hairdresser. Hey, Brandy. It's a really good movie. I can't recommend this movie strongly enough. I wish I could go back in time and recommend it to my younger self, honestly.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's also, I think again, I'm a little sad I got it sooner because I feel like I feel very similar where if I had known about this movie when I was in high school or middle school, I feel like this movie would have been my shit.
This movie would have been my favorite movie I'd ever seen, I think.
Yeah. It really would have been. And I feel like it's definitely one of those movies. I feel like it gonna get better upon rewatch. It's not like a movie that a lot of movies will, especially from that time period, can feel very problematic.
Yeah, I
The
feel you. I
writing
feel
just
you on
doesn't,
that.
let's face it, writing doesn't always age well, obviously.
The jokes
Or
don't
heck,
always land.
the
There's always a lot of like
style.
homophobic jokes
Yeah.
in every single movie
But
around this period that was a rom-com.
yes. Yeah, and I mean, in this movie, and everything feels. I mean, obviously, everything in a movie is incredibly purposeful in theory, but in this movie, the campiness, the weirdness, the really great chemistry. I mean, everything just really feels about right, and it ages really well. I mean, even like I said, even the costuming and production design, the architecture, I think is really on point, and it just really adds to the overall aesthetic of the movie. But honestly, look how hot she is.
This is her. That's the second character. That's the sister. That's the sister who he meets on arriving in LA. She's doing such a.
She's like
like
a
I love LA,
poet,
but I hate
artist.
LA. And like she's like, you ever thought about killing yourself? She's like, what? Like out of nowhere. She's a poet. She's great. I mean, Meg Ryan fully embodies all three of these women in such a perfect way. Like and this is the first one. This is the one that talks like a little bit like Audrey from Little Shop of Horrors. It's just so good. Hold on one second. I'm gonna bring her up. I mean, she's just like she's just like in the dark. We only kind of see her like in the darkness of this film because she's constantly being lit in this very dark way. I love it. I love this movie so much. Yeah, this is her.
Well, something I'm kind of curious about you. What about you? Like, when did you happen across this movie? What was your first? Do you remember your first time watching it?
Or was I just said like it was earlier this year, and I was just putting on movies randomly. I was like watching something on HBO Max. I think it was like Dr. Dolittle, like the new or Doolittle. Sorry, I was watching Doolittle. God knows why. Maybe it was to study for a match or something, and this just happened to be on.
Eddie Murphy one or the original?
No, that's Dr. Dolittle, the Robert Downey Jr. one. And I think it came in handy. I think I got a Doolittle question correct this year. Yeah, I did. Or was it the Jen Kemp year? I can't remember. I got a Doolittle question. Yeah, it was a Jen Kemp match. So I can't remember if I watched this before or after the Jen Kemp match, but I do know I got that question right about what's the name of that movie.
I remember that. Yeah, that was like
I think
that was a crazy hard 5-pointer.
No, it was not. It was round one. It was a round one bonus question.
Oh no, wait. It was like because I remember it was referencing to Dr. Dolittle. I couldn't. No, it was.
No, the question was, what movie is this? And it was like, this person directed a movie. And the trap was that you want to say Dr. Dolittle, but the answer is just Doolittle. And I managed to catch myself in time. But it was just a 5-pointer. Yeah, no, not 5-pointer. It's just 1-pointer. Round one.
Let's say the one I'm thinking about in particular was like, what was it? Like Jeffrey Tambor.
That was in the Snyder match with Merle, and that was 1994, I think 94 or whatever. Live action, family film features the vocal talents of like this and this. But was it Dr. Dolittle? It was, right?
Mm-hmm. It was Dr. Dolittle, and because he was referencing actors that voiced the animals.
Right. I think my guess was Homeward Bound, but I was like knew that was wrong. It's. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second, but I think I watched this movie afterwards because I watched Doolittle because I thought like, oh man, I can't believe I pulled that, but I should probably check out the voice cast on that. Turns out that's an insanely stacked voice cast in Doolittle. Jason Mantzoukas is there. We got Michael Sheen as the bad guy. We got Tom Holland. We got like, I feel like Wanda Sykes, but might not be. It might be somebody else. Maybe I think it might be Octavia Spencer, actually. But we got someone like that.
I hate to tie back Dr. Dolittle, Eddie Murphy's Dr. Dolittle, back to Joe Versus Volcano, but they both star Ossie Davis because Ossie Davis is plays Dr. Dolittle's father, but he's also plays the chauffeur in Joe Versus Volcano.
Oh my God! I was about to say, who is that guy? The guy who's the chauffeur is so good. He's great.
Yeah,
I made a note to like look him up, and I just didn't.
He's been in a ton of things. Like he was in Do the Right Thing. He was in Bubba Hotep, The
That's
Client,
right. He's
Grumpy
a
Old
Bubba Hotep.
Men. Over 100 acting credits. That's insane.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
Bonkers.
Oh. Yeah, he's one of these faces that you see and you're like, oh, that guy from Everything. Was he in Everything? He was in The Stand. That's right. He was in the original Stand that was like on TV.
In Malcolm X.
He's in Clue.
Fever.
He's in Clue. He's the black guy in Clue. Remember the black guy in Clue? Because there is one, and he is it. Oh, sorry, not the Clue. Sorry, I was saying I read that wrong. It's not Clue. I was thinking, where is he in Clue? And I thought maybe it was the police detective, but he's not black. So never mind. It was another named movie. But anyway, that aside, he's been in a ton of stuff, and you would know him and you'd see him and you'd be like, oh yeah, he's got a great little cameo here. So do so many people. There's so many great little cameos of just one scene with a character. He's the limo driver who refuses at first to give Tom Hanks advice about like what to wear and like where to go. Because Tom Hanks rents a limo for his last night in, I guess, New York or Chicago, wherever he is. And he needs to get outfits. He needs to get luggage. And he asks his driver, like, where should I go? And the driver's like, pulls the car over. Yeah, he goes like, what should I wear? And the guy pulls the car over and he goes, look, you asked me like what you should wear, but that defines a man. And I can't tell you who you are. I've spent my entire life trying to figure out who I am, and I'm tired. So like, I'm not going to help you figure out who you are. And you're like, oh, damn. Like he just told him to be better. Like that's the end of that. But then he like warms up to him and they end up going to like a bunch of like luggage places. And like, you know, Tom Hanks is a very genuine, earnest, good guy in this because it's the Tom Hanks character. So why wouldn't he be? So yeah. And they end up becoming friends and he like shows them around, but then that's all he does. That's like the end of his whole involvement in the film is that one little segment.
Yeah, well, like I feel like there's very few actors. Like I said, I'm sure a lot of other actors could, but I don't know if they could do it as well as Tom Hanks. That was like a whole
I can't think of any actor during this time period, this like early 90s. Like, I mean, you could have given it to Rob Lowe or Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah. Or like, I'm sure there's a lot of others, but Tom Hanks has this like really interesting way that comes across as like
well, this is genuine like, Hanks. This is
genuine.
This is peak Hanks,
where it doesn't come across as like ridiculous or asinine, or like
he's naive or stupid. Like he doesn't come across as like simple, but he comes across as like very earnest and also very funny. Like he's a very funny like actor, and he's very big in the like physical comedy. But he's a very like earnest. This character like is a very serious guy who like kind of learns to let loose a little bit, but it's that genuineness of Tom Hanks that like I never really got him as a leading man. Definitely. I was the same as you. Like I didn't really get like I liked him and I got like Forrest Gump and I get that he's a good actor, but I didn't really bought him as like the lead rom-com dude from like Sleepless in Seattle and You've Got Mail. I never bought him as like that dude. I've always wondered why not just get like a more handsome or like a more traditional, like what's his deal? Like he's just a hangdog looking guy. He's not particularly the most attractive guy, but he's very earnest. And then I saw this movie and I was like, oh, I get it. Like, I get it. Like, cause he can get it in this and he's very funny and he's like very charming and like, but he's a good guy. So he's a guy you want to bring home to your dad. Unless he's
it's like, it's the kind of, well, when it comes to Hollywood, like rom-coms and stuff like that in movies, I remember like whenever I watch like a rom-com with friends or family or whatever, we always ask, that's Lakeith Stanfield. So no.
I know. He's just making a joke, but it's very funny. Yeah. He's also the only black guy.
I mean, it's true. Sad but true. I do not like that movie. But
Knives Out? Interesting. Yeah. We should talk about that sometime. I don't love it the way other people love it.
I directed one of my favorite movies of all time. I love Brothers Bloom. It's one of my favorites.
I love Brothers Bloom too. Oh my God. None of the people love Brothers Bloom. And that's another fun adventure comedy rom-com.
I love that movie. I love that movie.
I love Brothers Bloom.
And also
I love it.
Personal top 5 movie scores of all time.
I also just love the genre of it. It's like, that's like a great Ryan Johnson mashup. It's like a heist movie that's also about like magicians, that's also about like it's a rom-com but like an adventure film, but also a heist movie and also like a crime film. There's like it's one where like the gang all has to get together and there's like an explosion expert and there's like this and that and there's got a lot of fun elements to it that I feel like Ryan really likes exploring like genres and like kind of twisting them on their head. And I get what he's doing for Knives Out. I just didn't love it the same way other people love it.
And I really totally buy Mark Ruffalo. I feel like we're getting really off topic, but I really
let's do it. Let's get off
Mark
topic.
Ruffalo as this this con man in that movie, and
it's like, one of my favorite Mark Ruffalo roles.
I love him in that movie. It's one of my favorite Mark Ruffalo roles because it's heartbreaking. It's so good. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. I'm wait, I don't know. Did you hate Brothers Bloom or did you hate Knives Out?
I don't sure, Malcolm. Marcus. I think he's saying that he hated. I don't know why I'm getting echo. Do you hearing that? Let me see.
Oh, that's so weird. But Knives Out wasn't for me. It was like, oh, surprise, the bad guy's the bad guy.
Yeah, I mean, like, have you ever seen Brick, which is Ryan's first movie? That one was great, and it also does like a weird genre thing where it's like a noir, like a hard-boiled noir, but it's set in a high school, and the detective is a high school age student played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And the language they use in that movie is really interesting because they have like their own made up dialect that they're speaking, like all these terms and phrases that you listen to. And you're like, at the beginning of the film, you're like, I have no idea what they're saying. They're saying all these weird phrases, like almost like they're living in an alternate universe. And then you realize like, no, it's almost like a film noir. It's like a Raymond Chandler hard-boiled detective novel. And they just have their own lingo. And it's like a hard-boiled detective novel that takes place in a high school. So all the different cliques are like, where you'd have the mob Don or the Don of the mob, the Godfather. You have like the head of like the football team, and instead of like having the femme fatale, you have like the head of the drama class, and like it's really cool. And I really like saw that with my dad, who like loved it, and I remember thinking like this is a great twisty genre thing, and I think that's what Ryan does really well. But getting back on track, I think that because this was like a real weird needle to thread, I think I love this movie too because it is like a weird genre subversion. There aren't that many movies that are like both like, maybe Guardians might be one, like ones that are like both equal parts adventure as they are like rom-coms, or like the romance is like centered for, like as hard as it is. And the comedy is centered as hard as it is. It usually is it's an adventure movie that has some elements of like a romance subplot or like a comedic beat, but it's not like, it's usually one or the other. Like Willow is not a rom-com, even though Val Kilmer is very hot and funny, and the dynamic between him and the chick or Saoirse are really good. Or Romancing the Stone, or several of the Michael Keaton movies, I feel like have that genre.
Now I need to like, because I'm sure there are quite a few.
I mean, Kurt Russell did like most of them. Like, let's be honest, it's like Big Trouble in Little China. It's like Overboard. It's like most movies Kurt Russell was in. Big
Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, but that movie's like equal parts like Princess romantic Bride. And it is adventure.
Princess Bride is one for sure.
But see, Princess Bride, the main couple in it are not. This is an adventure and it is funny, but like it doesn't have this thing. Sorry,
Mr. Right is a horrible movie.
It's a horrible movie. What are you talking about?
Mr. Right has Anna Kendrick. It has Harvey Keitel. Not Harvey Keitel. Tim Roth. Sam Rockwell. It's not a great movie by any means, but it knows what it is, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, Romancing the Stone.
And also, there's like a Ramuel, not Ramuel, it's like there's what's his name? He's a rapper, not Nas. What's his name?
Eminem.
No.
Jay-Z.
No.
Odd Future.
What?
Kendrick Lamar.
No.
Common. Oh, is it Common? Common's in every movie.
No. I don't know how to pronounce it. RZA.
Oh, the RZA.
RZA? Yeah, because I
would put my money on Big Common.
You directed like one or two movies as well.
He's in a bunch of movies, actually.
Cameo in it. Tim Roth. What the fuck is he doing?
Tim Roth is great. I've never seen Mr. Right. I have seen Mr. Wrong, which is the one with Bill Pullman and Ellen DeGeneres, and I was like, "What are you talking?" First of all, that is an awful movie. Second of all, that is not like an action adventure one. I think, Romancing the Stone is a great example. I think Overboard is a good example. I think Big Trouble is a good example. Like, there's just movies where the action and the comedy and the romantic thing are like intertwined in a way that makes you feel kind of like alive while watching it. Like, watching the movie makes you feel like your nerves are on fire in a certain way. Like, you can't wait to like be on this adventure with them. There was this one when I was growing up, Cutthroat Island, that I really liked, but I don't think that movie really holds up. That's Gina Davis, and I think one of the Quaids, probably the handsome Quaid.
Ella Enchanted.
Sort of, but that is just like more of like a fairy tale where there is a romantic love interest, it's Hugh Dancy, but like, you know, like it's sort of, I guess in my mind, it has to be that they're equals. Like the man and the woman are like, they're just two people coming from like separate directions in life, and they are equals, and they just are sort of at a crossroads, and they go on adventures. Stardust, maybe, but it's not
maybe,
super funny.
Absolutely. It's adventure, it's fantasy, it's romance and comedy. 100%.
It's not that much of a comedy. It's like pretty much those other things.
Rom-com. It is just as much of a rom-com as You've Got Mail.
Yeah, I guess I don't think of either of them as like very good rom-coms.
Oh, that's fair.
I mean, I just think of them as like kind of like standard movie stuff. I just think this because of the dialogue is so good, because like the little images that it brings to you, because the color scheme. I now know why I thought it was Joe Dante, because like if you just look at the colors on some of this, it looks like we're talking about The Burbs here. Like it does look like The Burbs, and maybe it wasn't just I thought Joe versus the Volcano because of the phrase Dante's Peak. Maybe it's because it literally looks like let's see. I think it's this one. Yeah. Like that looks like a scene from The Burbs. That looks like his weird dream sequence.
100%. Although his wife in The Burbs is Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia herself.
Yeah. I mean, wait, she's in the Kaminsky method. First of all, not to get it too off track again. Have you seen those Emmy nominations, Alex?
I haven't seen all that many. I've only seen
well, that's like because there's only 5 shows that were nominated this year for everything.
Let me double check.
5 total. Like 5 total shows were nominated for any category this year. It is weird. It was like The Handmaid's Tale. It was Mare of Easttown for like the
yeah. I know
WandaVision
was nominated quite a bit.
For some reason, they counted Hamilton as something that could be counted for the Emmys, but then nominated it not for anything except some of the actors. It didn't get nominated for a specific category. But it did allow for Daveed Diggs and Evan Peters to be nominated for Best Supporting Role in a limited series or a movie. Mm-hmm. And I was like, called that. Those are 2 people that I profiled and put on the cover of the New York Observer. So I'm very proud of myself for getting them both in.
Tree and Pose. I'm pretty happy about.
Yeah, I mean, there's just like 3 or 4 shows, I guess. And it just made me realize like how few programming like things we had this year.
I'm sorry, but how the fuck did Emily in Paris get nominated? I can't even. I
mean, when Ratchet starts getting nominations, you're like, oh no, that's not great.
Mm-mm. I am glad that Penis 1015 got nominated though, because
I love 1015. I mean, basically, if you were on TV this year and you could be qualified as TV, I think they had some trouble with like the WandaVision stuff, and like they got Mandalorian in there, but they couldn't seem to figure out exactly where to put stuff like Falcon and the Winter Soldier and WandaVision. So they kind of like. It's kind of like messed up, and you can sort of see that that's why it didn't like get nominated for best drama or comedy, because it's also very short. So they were trying to figure out whether it's a movie or miniseries. Anyway, the point being that like some of these categories are super crowded, like the miniseries one, or because it's got Mare of Easttown and like Mandalorian, I think, and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Or am I crazy? Anyway, point being. Kaminsky Method gets nominated for one thing. I think it's for Best Supporting Actor. Was it Morgan Freeman? I think so. I think he's going against Evan and Daveed. And I remember thinking, I really like that first season of Kaminsky Method. I'm not sure if you've seen it. It's a Chuck Lorre show, which is the guy who made 2.5 Men and Big Bang Theory, and I usually hate his stuff. But Kaminsky Method is pretty okay.
I'm not a big Chuck Lorre person.
Yeah, but this is just about like 2 really old guys, Alan Arkin and Michael Douglas, and they're dealing with like just getting old and dying and not really fulfilling that much as LA people, and it's pretty good.
Yeah. I saw one episode and I decided it wasn't for me. For me, when it comes to watching TV, I have a lot of friends and family be like, you have to just watch the first season and then you'll get to the next. Like I am not going to watch Schitt's Creek. Because I watched like 2 or 3 episodes and I'm like, I didn't find it all that funny. And I don't like
funny at first either.
Well, that's the thing. I felt that way about Breaking Bad and everything. And a lot of people.
Well, that's not supposed to be funny.
You have to watch the first season, and then you're good. It's perfect after that. And I'm just not going to invest time in waiting for something to catch my attention.
I mean, welcome to how I feel about how I felt about the MCU and DCEU for a very long time. Lord of the Rings. I was like, I just have to get past this 2.5 hour chunk. I just have to get past like the first 4 movies, and then it gets interesting. That's how I felt about the Fast and Furious franchise. I was like, why would I watch 4 feature-length films before it gets good for me. Like, so I get you on that. I also feel the other way about it, which is I used to be a TV critic, and I loved being a TV critic, and I would constantly be like, just watch the first season of BoJack. It's not that great at first, but then the jokes build on each other. So by season 2, like, it's the best show you've ever seen.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, I absolutely agree. I wish I was just more invested. I just keep thinking when it comes to TV, I don't like watching TV all that much anyway. If I'm watching something on my TV, I'm watching movies, almost exclusively movies.
Oh, opposite. I'm opposite. It's very hard to get me to watch a movie.
TV is just a chore to me unless I'm watching. Yeah, and also there's like some shows where I tried watching Better Call Saul, and it just made me so uncomfortable to watch.
That's fair. Look, there's some shows that I can't watch because it makes me uncomfortable. Like I don't like Curb Your Enthusiasm. I like Seinfeld, okay, but I'm not a big Curb Your Enthusiasm fan because like I can't stand the
Arrested Development is a struggle fuck for me to watch.
What's the second one?
Arrested Development.
Oh, I liked Arrested Development until until the 4th season. Then it's really hard to watch. Yeah, I don't like cringe stuff that much. I think my thing with television versus movies is like, I love the dynamic element of television, which is like television can adapt based on like what people are saying about it. Like it can respond to you. Like it's like not a hot or a cold medium. It's like Marshall McLuhan would have to have a new phrase for what television can do now, because it's like it interacts with you. It's like a hot medium and a cold medium. You don't just see it and like absorb it. You see it, absorb it, react to it online, and then it course corrects and can change based on what fans and viewers are saying. Like it can respond to it and sort of mold itself differently. Whereas movies are a very static thing that are stuck in time and by definition cannot change once they are released. Like they are just fixed permanent objects. And I guess that creates like a kind of cool artourism where just the art speaks for itself, and that's great. But I really like the conversation that TV can have where you can watch something, it cannot be for you, and then a season later, it's like it is for you. It is now for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely agree with that for sure. It's just amazing how a lot of like TV shows change, the tones, direction, storylines, all that good stuff. It changes obviously, and I think that's amazing. But again, if you just don't care when it comes, I just don't care about TV enough.
Well, I think I also just really respond well to the idea of what it takes to this has always become a cinema bias, guys. Now we're just talking about my bias against cinema. But
also my bias against TV.
Yeah, it should be called TV and cinema bias. Rob, I don't know if that's sarcasm or not, but like, no, I'm not saying the fans should determine the outcome of a show, but I'm saying a show has the ability to respond to fans one way or another. Like, it doesn't matter if it does or not, but like, it can listen to it or it cannot listen to it, but it can address the fandom and it can definitely like reference it. And like, it doesn't have to sway itself towards the fandom, but it can definitely be like, I see you, and like we see what you're saying, and like whether we agree or not, like they can make jokes about it. Like there are a lot of shows that like make jokes about the fandom of who watches it, from Sherlock to like BoJack to like very serious shows like can talk about like the family West Wing, like Sorkin shows especially can sort of talk about the kind of culture that it breeds. Rick and Morty, the MCU stuff, like it can all sort of have a response based on the fandom that it has and the fandom that it wants to have. And I think that's a really cool conversation. And critics, you know.
Well, I absolutely agree. I think it's a really great conversation to have overall. But the thing is, I completely disagree, Rob. To me, based on my own personal experiences, I think fans usually are not great when it comes to creating outcomes.
I think he's being sarcastic. Because like the idea is the fans. I think the idea is the fans should absolutely never determine what.
Yeah, never.
What things go. Yeah.
Usually it's whenever things like that happen, it's the worst thing.
Oh, wait, he's not even saying, he's saying it as a question, I see. He's saying, should fans determine the outcome of a show? He's not saying they should.
There's no question mark next to it, though.
There's no question mark, but read the sentence. Should fans determine the outcome of a show? Not, fans should determine the outcome of a show, which is one thing. It's saying, should fans determine the outcome? There's no question mark, but the should's in the wrong place for it to be a statement. I'm just going to say that. The should's in the wrong place. Game of Thrones was a game changer when TV became big budget, buzzworthy, and cinematic. I mean, look, we can have this conversation forever. Game of Thrones was, I wouldn't say it's a game changer, but it definitely was a sign of the times, because we already had, like, you know, The Sopranos and The Wire were the game changers. Sex and the City was like a game changer. Like all these things where Game of Thrones was huge in terms of scope, but Lost was on before Game of Thrones, and Lost for what it did was the game changer in terms of adventure, action, sci-fi television, and that was network. So that was crazy.
It was also the idea of, well, obviously had the golden age of television, reemergence of golden age was in the late 90s, early 2000s, like you said, with those shows that you just mentioned.
That's where it began,
and the idea that anti-hero is becoming more and more prevalent
in television.
A lot of the because of the times, the anti-hero in particular.
Well, the anti-hero was big into movies. We've got our Taxi Driver. We've got our, you know, we've got our anti-heroes in movies. It's just they didn't really transfer over to television, which was thought of as like sort of a dummy medium. It's thought of as like a stupider, like that you just watch it to mindlessly consume easy stuff.
These really cool, interesting characters that require a lot of story and a really great writing. You don't want to waste that on TV. A little, but now we do.
Hey, guess what? Bad news, Marcus. Guess what about? I hate to tell you about the thing about Game of Thrones that happened. Turns out that didn't end that well either. It turns out that wasn't that good either by the end of it. Things can start out really good and have a lot of promise, and then totally shit the bed. That is the problem with television, is it can go on for so long that it becomes the villain that it doesn't want to be. It either dies early or becomes the villain. Lives long enough to become the villain. But you know, I think from Lost we got Watchmen, which is like incredible television and some of the best television we've ever had. So anyway, going back, and I can thread this back to the conversation about Joe versus the Volcano very easily, because one of the cool things about television that I like is that it's a group effort. Like, even there's a showrunner, but the voice comes from a writer's room. There is by definition a room of people writing the show. Not by definition, but most of the time. Whereas like movies are generally just one person writing it, and maybe that person in this case especially is also directing it, and it's just a singular sort of vision. Like, there are other people working on production, but it's like it's one person or two people's brainchild that they've collaborated on, the director and the writer, who in this case is the same guy. But this kind of benefits from that, where it's like it's just so good because it is just one person's brain just coming up with this great world, and like it's not being like diluted in any way. Like, this is just one person's like fantasy, and you can totally hear it in this voice that I find it really hard to tie back into the Doubt stuff, and I find it really hard to tie it back into Wild Mountain Time. Like, I'm trying to hear it, like I'm trying to hear the same outlook about life or anything, the same philosophy, and it's hard to find. But Moonstruck and this are very similar in terms of philosophy.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you to a certain extent. I do disagree in terms of to me, he didn't feel like similar to like Wild Mountain Time or anything like that, but in terms of a man questioning his identity, obviously finding his sense of self-worth and finding a certain sense of self-confidence through these journeys, and his relationships with the women in their lives.
That's obviously really funny. I was going to say the opposite, which is
a definite pattern, obviously.
I think I was thinking the opposite, which is I couldn't hear him in the Jamie Dornan character, but when I realized, no, it's that he's the what's her name character? He's the Emily Blunt character. It's the same as like Cher. Like, Cher and Nick Cage both have great speeches and great philosophies in Moonstruck, but like it's her story. And this is Joe's story. And so like when he gives dramatic speeches, it's the same as like when she gives dramatic speeches in Wild Mountain Time, because they are the same kind of speech at the end of the day. Like, it's all about her being like, want to get like live a little, like, you know, get out of your shell. I've spent too long being like cloistered. I've spent too long being like, you know, like, so like it's, you know, she's the one who wants to go on adventures. She's the one who's like romantic, you know, like she's, you know, he's more like just the love interest. I feel like Jamie Dornan's got an interesting arc, but he's not like he's not the main character of the film.
Well, the thing is, I actually there were, to me, Meg Ryan's character, the final Meg Ryan, the blonde Meg Ryan at the very end, she felt actually kind of reminded me of Emily Blunt's character in Wild Mountain Time a little bit. Not only just because at the very end, the whole thing with like wearing a white dress, blonde, beautiful, and everything, obviously, but they were both kind of. They both were very strong-willed, very vocal. When they like stood their ground and they were like, "No, I love you," this is what's happening. I don't care what's going on right here, but this is what we're gonna do. And to me, they felt very similar, even though obviously they're like by no means the same character or anything, obviously, but it felt their similarities definitely were aligned to me.
Okay.
And there was even some, like when we meet Meg Ryan's character, like on the boat, where she calls him like Frisco or something like that.
Yeah, she has a funny little negative, or like it's what is it, Freddie or something? Is it she call him Freddie?
Yeah, well, she kind of calls him a few different names. Kind of, she's baiting him a little bit.
It's like she's baiting him, but I think it's she just calls him Freddie for some reason or something like that. I think it is just Freddie, but he's like, "Why are you calling me Freddie?" And she's like, "I don't know. I'm just feeling like an asshole."
Yeah, and she's baiting him and she's testing him, and she at the same time she's trying to see what kind of reaction she can get out of him, and she just kind of also determined what this trip is going to be like as well. How should she prep mentally going into this little boat ride to wherever.
Because like basically she's doing this. We find out because she's a very well developed character. What's great about her character in this, or her characters on this, is some of them only have like a scene or two of screen time, but they feel so well developed that when they leave and you realize there's another Meg Ryan, you're like, wait, what? Like that isn't our main love interest? Like you can like a lot of things about that first one without knowing where this movie's going. I'm sure you thought she was going to be the love interest of the film, because you also know Meg Ryan stars in this movie, so you're probably like,
so
oh. Well, so you see her on the cover of the movie. She's the main star of the movie. I'm sure you thought that's the character we're going to be following. Nope, she's out. Then it's like, well, there's another Meg Ryan. Nope, she's out.
Like, it couldn't be, because I was like, that's not the right Meg Ryan. So I'm like,
did you know that there was a right one? Maybe she dyed her hair. Why would you immediately assume?
No, at that point, no. I thought I was like, my thought process was, well, at this point we've already had two, so I was actually waiting
for the third one. Okay, gotcha.
I just wasn't sure how that. I thought it was going to be like more of like a dream sequence or something like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
the sister coming
by the end of the movie. But yeah, and so not only that, but the way we are introduced to Emily Blunt's character on Wild Mountain Thyme, where she is baiting him. She is also blonde, wearing a white outfit, and she's kind of coming off a little masculine as well, like where she is like not only baiting him and everything, she's very confident in her stance. And the way she talks to him, to Jamie Dornan's character in Wild Mountain Thyme, felt very similar to the initial character introduction of her character when they meet as well. So I was like,
yeah, it's also very much like a Cher and Moonstruck. These are all very outspoken, very like, very intense women, Yeah,
very confident women, beautiful women. Oh my gosh. She is so beautiful in this movie.
Yeah, I this is my favorite I've ever seen Meg Ryan. She's ever been in my mind. And then also, I tell this story sometimes. I'm not sure if you've heard before, but one time I interviewed Bruce Dern, who during the interview straight up slipped me his phone number, which was, I guess it should be creepy, but it was instead delightful. I was thrilled. But second of all, he kept being like, "You remind me of my daughter's friend from high school," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And I was like thinking about it, and he goes, "My daughter Laura Dern," and I was like, "Oh, right, yes, of course, your daughter Laura." And he was like, "Yeah, remind me of her friend Meg Ryan." And I was at the time I was like, "Wait, really? No one's ever really said I look like or sound like Meg Ryan." But I was like thrilled in the moment, and then I was like,
I think it's actually similar smiles.
Maybe that's it. Sure, her teeth are better, but like, it's funny because I think this is the first movie that I look back and I went, "Oh, that's freaking awesome!" Like, yes, thank you, Bruce Dern, you lovely man. I'm gonna text him. No, I'm not gonna text him, but yeah, no,
7 years later.
Yeah, 7 years later. It is like 7 years later. What's up? You up, Bruce Dern? You up? No, I think this movie is so great. Kind of sad how Meg Ryan looks today. I haven't seen how she looks today, but I'm sure it's fine and just the natural process of aging and stuff.
Yeah, she's a beautiful woman. So let's not talk about the way she looks. That's kind of weird as well.
Yeah. I mean, unless she was in a horrible car accident, in which case, I mean, look, things happen. But I think that is she still with Dennis Quaid?
No, they had a divorce. They had a pretty nasty divorce. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, because he's crazy.
She has had surgeries done, but
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it, but
it doesn't matter, because everyone in Hollywood has literally had surgery. But yeah, she was married to Dennis Quaid for a while. Her son, oh my gosh, is what's his face from The Boys. It's what's his face.
Oh wow. Jack Quaid. It's Jack Quaid. His name's Jack Quaid.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when looking at him. I'm like, on one hand, I'm like, that's 100% Dennis Quaid's son, and then on the other hand, I'm like, that's also 100% Meg Ryan's son. Like,
Yeah,
he looks so much like them both. It's insane.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm looking at pictures of Meg Ryan and I see what he said. I'm seeing what he means now, but yes, let's avoid that. But yikes. Yeah. I think that this movie really shows that like she has a talent that I honestly was like overlooking, and I feel bad for that because I do just kind of tend to lump rom-com actresses. Like if in 10 years I see a movie where Kate Hudson puts on a fantastically hilarious performance in something, I will reassess my view of her in Bride Wars and those Matthew McConaughey movies. But so far she hasn't done anything to like truly impress me. But neither has Matthew McConaughey in terms of comedy.
100% a lesbian story.
I'm sorry?
That movie is 100% a lesbian movie.
Bride Wars? Oh yeah, it kind of is. It absolutely is.
It 100% is.
I'm trying to remember who the fiancés are in Bride Wars. I feel like
I know one of them is Chris Pratt.
What's the other one? Bill Moyer? No, that would be crazy.
No, oh shoot. He's supposed to be like, I guess, the nice guy. No, wait.
Is it Chris Evans? Is it two Chris's? Is it Chris Pine?
No, give me a hot minute. Brian Greenberg.
I've never heard of him. That's fine.
He's this guy. This guy. He's done a lot.
Oh, what? Oh yeah, that guy.
A lot of work. He's done a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like in Friend. Yeah, he was in How to Make It America. He was in Bride Wars. Yeah, like a ton of movies. Yeah, he was in The Tick, Mindy Project.
I remember him from Mindy Project. I think maybe. You know who should get more work though in rom-coms and just in general is Chris Messina from the Mindy Project. And Ike Barinholtz and that other guy who I think is kind of a jerk, but like Adam whatever, but he's very funny. Ike Barinholtz, Chris Messina, who is my freaking like talk about bucket list. Chris Messina's top of that bucket list. Love him.
He loved him. I love him. I think he's absolutely beautiful. He's funny and everything.
He's like short, which is my thing. Like that's like kind of like he's eye level, which I like.
But it really stressed me the fuck out knowing that Mindy ends up with him, and I was like, this doesn't make fucking sense to me.
Why not? I feel like they're a good couple. Mindy
and the entire time he's literally making fun of her in a very not so nice way.
Yeah,
because you can have a relationship with your partner where you're making fun of them, but it's in a fun, lighthearted, easy way where you are challenging each other and going back and forth. That's one thing, totally. But he is constantly criticizing her in a very mean, genuinely mean way.
He is kind of you're right in that role. He is because he's also playing against type because I feel like Chris Messina's thing is kind of to be like the nebbishy, fun, like the sort of almost like underdog guy, and in that he was supposed to be like the macho Italian dude.
It's funny you say that because when I associate Chris Messina, I almost associate him almost exclusively with being in movies, like being an asshole.
Yeah, Birds of Prey. He was great as Victor Zaz. I loved him in Birds of Prey. God, him and Ewan McGregor. Talk about like something I'd like to see LGBTQ spinoff of is like Black Mask or the Black Mask, right? And Victor Zaz just like on their own journey through sexual discovery. Like put that on for me, please.
He was a cheating asshole in the song Sam Smith's music video. I'm Not the Only One. That kind of put him on the map. I mean, he was the asshole in Newsroom.
He wasn't the asshole in the news. I mean, he was kind of an asshole, but he wasn't.
He cheated on his girlfriend a whole bunch of times.
Yeah, but he wasn't the bad guy. The bad guy in the newsroom was like, I guess, BJ Novak when he showed up.
He cheated on his girlfriend and blamed her. I'm sorry, that makes you a bad guy.
Yeah, but like it's a Sorkin show, so everybody on that show was an assoule. Like by definition, everyone on that show was a piece of shit. Like there was a guy who like in the last season was like his outlook in the last season was there was a character who was supposed to be the good guy. Sorry. I'm hearing an echo again. That's weird. So there was a guy whose whole thing was that he went to a college to investigate a woman who claimed that her roommate a guy that she was dating had attacked her and raped her. And the good guy The guy whose side we're supposed to be on in this episode was like, sorry, ma'am, we can't put this on the news. It's your word against his, and he has a right, like as a person in this country, to not have his identity like addressed. And like, and she's like, well, the courts don't like have thrown out my case, and like this happened, and like you're not gonna get like tell my story. And he's like, nope, you have to understand, that's the thing about media. We have a responsibility to not like, just base things like, tell stories on baseless accusations. And that's like where the episode ended. And that's like what you were supposed to, like, she was taught her lesson in that. And I had a friend who was a female writer who was working on that show in that writer's room and literally quit the day that episode came out. Cause she was like, yeah, that was the worst experience of my life. I tried to like fight against it. Like that would be the end of the episode, is that she was wrong to like try to get her attacker, like to confront him on the news. Horrible. But that is just the newsroom. That is just Sorkin. Such great values, except when it comes to women.
That's the reason why I don't like Sorkin movies usually.
I mean, I do like to talk as fast as his characters, but yeah.
Yeah, it's
wait, so Marcus asking,
he writes annoying characters.
He writes characters that seem, can I say this? As uncircumcised as I imagine him being. I hope that's not offensive to anyone. I just mean he's very waspy. That's he's a super waspy dude. And I feel like the best quote I ever read about Aaron Sorkin was something he said himself, which was the hardest thing that it was every day. The hardest thing he had to do every day was wake up and not smoke crack, because he used to be a crackhead when he was writing Sports Night. He was addicted to crack cocaine, and he would that's how he wrote 2 seasons of Sports Night, locked himself in a hotel, did that. And so, by the way, it's not a bad thing to have a drug past. I mean, a lot of people do. I do, whatever. But the idea that the hardest thing in your day or in your life is just waking up and not smoking crack, it's like it's such like a scintillating detail. And I feel like that's very Sorkin. But anyway, this movie, I think I would put it up in my top 5 rom-coms of all time. It's definitely hitting up in my top 5. I'm maybe even top 3 if you're going to like push me against the wall about it. Mm-hmm. It's very hard, and Moonstruck might be the other one, like another top 5 or 3.
I don't know where I would rate in personally in terms of rom-coms, just because when it comes to rom-coms, nowadays when I think about it, I don't know if I haven't watched all that many overall.
Well, we think of the genre of rom-coms. This doesn't really fit into the genre of rom-coms. It's not like a meet
exactly. Yeah. Absolutely, but in terms of more unconventional rom-coms or unconventional romance films,
or even action adventure for me.
Yeah,
this is going on my top of my action adventure list, if we're being honest, because I
definitely respect the fuck out of that for sure. It's more comedy.
So wait, you're saying that you haven't seen that many rom-coms, maybe, but like you still are gonna not put this on the top of it? Why not? What else goes on there?
I want to say it just comes down to when it comes to I think when it comes to writing like personal top 10s, it just comes down to personal preferences.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it just comes down to me, not only what comes down to what's a good movie, but there's a lot of sentimental value that goes into it. A lot of
so like what's your example of
rewatchability? Like again, I think one of my favorite rom-coms of all time is Pride and Prejudice. To me, that movie is hilarious, but a lot of people don't really think of it as a comedy at all, but I associate it with as a rom-com more than anything. But I can totally see why people associate exclusively as romance. Totally get that. But that's why. So it's different for everyone. But when it comes to this movie, I really love it. It leans much heavier on the comedy with a lot of romance. But if there were any kind of top 10 like genre bending or unconventional romances or adventure romance, comedy romance kind of thing, this would be absolutely in the conversation.
Okay, not to push too bad. I like this. I like where you're going with this. Not to push too hard back on this, but like if you're saying Pride and Prejudice should count as a rom-com, this should absolutely count as a rom. I think this is
honestly, I do. Yeah. I absolutely do. Like again, when I watch Pride and Prejudice, I do want to clarify 2005's Pride and Prejudice, directed by Joe Wright. I watched that and I bust a gut laughing.
The closest thing I think to this equivalent is that one that was like, what was it? It was called Austenland, Jane Austenland, or
I
something.
love Austenland.
I love that movie. That's a rom-com, like, because that takes out all like the other elements.
Like very traditional rom-com. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a rom-com, and it has Brett McKenzie from Flight of the Conchords, really sexy. It's got that other dude. Wait, are you talking about the Joe Wright one? Who plays Mr. Darcy? Is that Colin Firth, or is that the dude from?
No,
it's the dude from Succession.
Mr. Darcy, Matthew McFadden.
Yeah, he's great. That guy is hilarious. He's so funny on Succession. He is so funny. He plays like the brother-in-law, like the guy that the sister's marrying.
Hilarious. In they remade. It wasn't. I don't think it was Four Weddings and a Funeral.
So they did. First of all, they did remake that into a TV show. But secondly, I haven't seen that Pride and Prejudice. But now I'm thinking
Matthew McFadden
though.
He was like in a TV romance.
Yeah, that's they did Four Weddings and a Funeral as a TV show. So maybe he was in it. Yeah, he was. I mean, I'm not sure if he's in it, but they did it as a TV show.
Wait, no, it was no. It wasn't Four Weddings and a Funeral because the movie is almost like a play. It takes place exclusively at a funeral, and there's like Peter.
Is it a movie or TV show?
No, and Peter Dinklage is in it.
Oh yeah, it's the you're right. That's remade with nothing. But that's you're talking about the British version, the one that's not remade with Chris Rock. Peter Dinklage is in the one with Chris Rock, I believe. He's in the remake, and the original was.
No, Peter Dinklage is in both. I thought.
Maybe I don't.
Give me a minute. Give me a hot minute.
I have the name of both.
Death at a Funeral.
Death at a Funeral. There we go. I was thinking Murder by Death, which is another movie.
And Peter Dinklage is in both.
Okay. So he's the one in both. But you're saying McFadden has been in which one?
He was in Matthew McFadden was in the
original, right?
He was in the 2007 version.
Yeah. So Marcus is saying his favorite rom-com is Four Weddings and a Funeral. I mean, look, that's fair. I actually have a Hugh Grant thing. Like I'm not the hugest Hugh Grant thing, but I think Hugh Grant can like get it in some movies. I think Colin Firth can get it in some movies. It's just, for me, it's a very specific thing where Moonstruck is a really good rom-com for me. It's got to have a give and take between the male and female lead where there's some sort of equality or like, there's some sort of parry. Like, it's not just sort of like a girl being like, and like the guy being like, if I was a girl, I'd be like, it just can't fall into the stereotype tropes of like men and women. Sorry?
He's like, it's pretty much like, why don't girls like me kind of thing.
Or it's like,
I honestly, I can't stand Four Weddings and a Funeral.
my least favorite one, I think, is in terms of the convention or the tropes, or that I can just point to and be like, this is why I don't like this kind of thing, is How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, or possibly Failure to Launch. Those are both two examples of movies where I'm just like, ooh, are you fucking kidding me? Like, women talk like this to their girlfriends, and guys are like, hey, dudes, like. Also, Failure to Launch is hilarious when you think of it. It's technically like a Hangover prequel because it's got both Bradley Cooper and what's his name? The guy who
about that. Yeah.
I did not see.
I feel like that question is going to pop up. Like Kathy Bates and I don't know, Peter Boyle.
Oh no! The dad is that famous footballer. He's a famous football guy. Is the dad from Failure to Launch?
Yeah. Well,
he's got a name that's also the name
plays our parents of parents of Matthew.
He's terrible in rom-coms. I'll just be honest. He's not a good rom-com dude.
Film, and I'm waiting for that to pop up.
I know his name. The dad's name is a football guy's name who's got the same name as somebody else who's an actor. Because I was no, that's not.
It's a huge name.
It's Terry Bradshaw. Oh, it's the same name as her name from Sex and the City. From Sarah Jessica Parker's name in Sex and the City is Carrie Bradshaw. Carrie Bradshaw, and then this guy's name is Terry Bradshaw. Very confusing. But if they ask you, Kathy Bates and Terry Bradshaw, like co-stars, parents, or like, have supporting roles as the parents in this rom-com with Zooey Deschanel also in a supporting role and Bradley Cooper, that's Failure to Launch, folks. You heard it here first. I do want to bring up one more scene before we cap off this episode about rom-coms and what we like about them. Hugh Grant can be very serious. I haven't seen Paddington 2 yet. I know it's the best movie of all time, but I'm looking forward to seeing him in that because it's supposed to be silly and hilarious.
I love him in Paddington too.
Yeah, I feel like he can do. Maybe I'm being crazy. Haven't we seen Hugh Grant do serious stuff before? Like very serious roles. Serious stuff. Like I know. I'm trying to think of one, and I can't pull it. Joe versus the Volcano.
But he's done like quite a few. Like I loved him in About a Boy in particular. I know that's more of that is also like a romance dramedy. He was in like Florence Foster Jenkins. I don't think he was a shining star of it, but
I actually loved him, Florence Foster Jenkins. That's a great one for him.
He was also like in Cloud Atlas. I don't know if you remember that one, but
yeah, I mean, I remember it kind of.
And if you have you seen Pirates Band of Misfits?
No, what's that?
Okay, you need to watch this. We need to have an episode of Pirates Band of Misfits. It's a claymation film. It's hilarious.
Oh, I hate claymation.
Peter Lord. It was one of the directors. A lot of really big names are like Martin Freeman, Selma Hayek, Hugh Grant are voice actors in it. It's hilarious.
Question.
It's hilarious.
I will watch it. Question. Is this problematic that this is Nathan Lane? If the joke is that they're supposed to be an island of Jewish people who got lost and ended up in the Pacific Islands and are saying like actual really Jewish words.
Explained that they're supposed to be like
no, they explain it. You know that she has a little thing where she says, "Oh, I'm looking in the book," and she goes, "This is an island apparently populated by Jewish immigrants who got lost and thought they were like in America and just ended up here." And like, yeah, she has a whole thing about it. Otherwise, and she goes, and their thing is that they like orange soda and that they worship this kind of God. So it's a hybrid of. She goes, it's a hybrid of Judaic, like Pacific Islands, and one other like funny thing. Well, culture.
All the like as far as outside of like Nathan Lane and like one or two other people, like
everyone
looked like they actually kind of watch them out more like a dramedy, to be honest, that show. But it, like when she's like in the process of they're getting cleaned and everything like that, everyone looked like they were supposed to be like Pacific Islanders, like Samoan or something. They were all like, a lot of them are like
but the chief is Abe Vigoda, like a very famous character actor who I don't believe is Jewish or Southern Pacific Islands. I think he's Italian. I mean, he's from The Godfather. He's very famously the guy in The Godfather.
Yeah.
So I think it's just like the words they're saying in that scene are Hebrew. These are Hebrew prayers that they're doing, but they're doing them in the style of a Pacific Islands chant. So it's like it is like a funny bit, and I'm not personally offended, so I don't know if anyone else is, but I was like, is this okay to laugh at? And I was like, it's fine, Drew. You're one of the people they're joking about, so like it's fine if you want to laugh at it because it's funny. But it is like funny that you had the same kind of reaction to Moonstruck, which is this supposed to be about Jewish people or Italian people? It turns out he just likes mixing the culture a lot.
I was like, I don't know. Like, it's like yeah. Maybe no, but that's the point. We like to talk with our hands.
Yeah, we talk with our hands, and John Patrick Shanley is Irish as hell, but he likes looking at those other cultures a lot, and so that's Abe Vigoda as the chief. Just cannot tell if this is problematic or not. It's still to this day, I'm like, is this offensive? But like, if the joke is supposed to be that they are white Jews who have started having children with the native people of the island, I don't know. I'm not going to get into it, but I think it's very funny. H. Grant in Guy Ritchie's latest movie, The Gentleman, was a great sleazy journalist. I love Hugh Grant, but I have not seen that movie yet.
I have a lot of problems with The Gentleman, to be honest. I have a lot of problems.
With who?
I have a lot of problems.
With what? I didn't hear what you said.
The Gentleman, the movie, Guy Ritchie's The Gentleman. Yeah, there's a lot of like really unnecessary racism, like comments thrown about in ways that are like said by heroes, and where you're still like, oh, he's saying this really awful racist thing, but you know what? We want to high five him anyway.
Yeah, that sucks.
And I'm like, I don't want to high five you. You just said something really, really awful. Even if you did like a cool thing and like kick someone's ass and the way you did it, but
screw that guy. I don't have any huge feelings about Guy Ritchie one way or another, but like if you say so, like then I believe it. But anyway, Alex, do you have any final thoughts about Joe versus Volcano? One of my favorite movies of all time, I guess.
I was like, final thoughts overall is that Specifically, I think it's a really great, funny comedy. Even if you don't like rom-coms, I feel like this is a very good comedy film. But also, if you are not big into adventure movies, but you love rom-coms, you're still gonna love a lot of the adventure aspects in this movie as well. So I think it's fun for a lot of people to really dive into, really take away something they enjoy from it.
Yeah, I mean, my final thought is like, if you haven't seen this, like, please go watch it because it's so good, and it's so like I think between this and watching Doubt the week before, it's just really impressive and surprising to me that, like, somebody could just have this kind of career where they just, he just does what he wants, like this and the dinosaur movie, or like, We're Back, and like this and Doubt, this and Moonstruck and Wild Mountain Time. They're just all such vastly different kinds of movies that span across so many different genres that it's inspiring. Like, I'm like, you don't have to be stuck doing one thing. You don't have to just be a genre director or the director who does, or a writer director who does one kind of thing. You can literally go wherever you want with your career. Like, just go for it. And I find that very impressive. He takes risks. So John Patrick Shanley, tip of the hat to you from me. Mm-hmm. Alex, where can people find you if they love your content?
You can find me right up here at real_AlexMac on Twitter. Mm-hmm. You can also find me doing some stuff over the Called Action podcast as well.
Mm-hmm. And as for me, Faux Cockney. So yeah, I love this movie, William. Didn't we talk about this last week? This is one of my favorites. You can find me over on everything that's involving the word VideoDrew. VideoDrew Patreon. It's one word, so it's patreon.com/VideoDrew. So please sign up. You get fun benefits, like you can come to study sessions. You get to pick movies for both VideoChronic quizzes and possibly this show. We know what we're doing next week, Alex. Do we want to say what it is?
No, you do.
Okay, it is another John Patrick Shanley movie. We are going to do a quiz on it, I think, either next week or the week after. It is one that he wrote, didn't direct. It is Congo.
Oh,
because
yeah.
he also wrote Congo. What? That movie's like a totally different thing. That's an adventure movie that's not even partly romantic. It's just, it's all over the place, man. His career is like James Mangold, man. Like, what is he doing?
Like, what's happening in this movie?
You're gonna make Kate and Leopold and Logan? How are you gonna do that? I guess Hollywood cannot keep you in a box, man.
Yeah, I appreciate the fuck out of it. There's very few screenwriters that are that have such a diverse filmography.
Yeah, most people seem like journeymen in Hollywood. I have to say that. Like, most people become like journeyman, and like, also, they just do one thing.
In Congo, big takeaways. Tim fucking Curry. What can't he do?
Tim fucking
Curry. What can't he do?
I don't know, man. Not much. There's not much he can't do.
He's perfect in every single way.
I love him so much. I can't believe I've never seen him before in this. Yeah, please sign up for that. I'm hearing that weird echo again. You can also just follow me on the Patreon, and that will give you a good sense of my schedule when things go live. We do this every Tuesday at 7 p.m. On Mondays and Thursdays. I hate that echo. We do the VideoChronic pop culture quizzes, which is me and Eric, and me and NerdChronic, and we get people on to come do 20 questions, inner geekdom style, about a particular movie, sometimes franchise. Last night we did all of The Office Part 2. It was our return of The Office quiz with Ben Goddard and Lace the Party. I know next week we have coming up even on Monday or Thursday, we're going to do Inglourious Bastards with Paige and Jeff Snyder. And maybe a special guest. We'll see. On Sunday nights at 8 or 9, depending on what's going on, we have Live in the Dark, which is my interview show that I now do, or I've been doing for the last year, but we've slightly tweaked the format. We have some fun guests coming on. We just had the director Nacho Vigalondo on. That was awesome. We're having Mike Mitchell from Doughboys coming on pretty soon. So that's also awesome. And then next Saturday, I believe, I'm debuting a new show because I'm not doing enough. It's called Why Are We Like This? And it's me and Adam Collins discussing some of our fundamental, pivotal movies and television and pop culture and books that have made us sort of who we are today, and having on guests and trying to sort of discussing why we're like this and what pop culture made us this way. So, guys, that's on Saturday. Yeah, it's going to be a bi-monthly show, I think, but that's going to start next Saturday at 7 p.m. I believe.
Oh, real quickly, I did want to let you know, I did tweet it out earlier today. Tom Hanks does in fact play a man named Joe in 2 movies. In this movie and as Joe Banks, as well as Joe Fox in You've Got Mail, where
So 3
not
movies.
only Joe is his first name, but also he falls in love with Meg Ryan in these rom-coms.
Wait, in Saving Mr. Banks, isn't he Walt
No,
Disney?
no. In this movie, in Joe Versus Volcano, his name is Joe Banks. Remember?
Right.
Yeah, his name is Joe Banks. But, so his name is Joe. But he also goes by the name Joe in You've Got Mail, and his name is Joe Fox, which is another rom-com that he stars in. So it's just kind of weird that he in both films he plays a man named Joe that falls in love with Meg Ryan and 90s rom-coms.
Yeah, that is true. That the 2 of the 3 movies, his name is Joe, and that's a pretty popular name, but not that popular, folks. Thank you, Marcus. Yeah, it's gonna be fun, and yeah, guys, check us out. We're also just all over the internet, so check us out, and we will talk to you soon. Say good night. Night. Bye.